Welcome back, folks. This is going to be simulcast this week on RGR and on Locked On Chiefs. So we're going to start, and our favorite guest, friend of the show, Matt Derrick, is back. How are you, Dad?
Other than, having quarantine hair and everything else,
that's why
I'm doing okay. Yeah, I should have put the hat on for this.
I can't even get names out right today. I got a frog in my throat. We got hit with a cold, so the whole house is kind of grumbly and everything. But a lot going on across the world of football. Specifically, the thing that I want to talk about today, and folks, we're going to be doing the crossover, so we're going to have bits and pieces with Matt all week. A lot of turmoil about the 2017 class of fifth-year options. A ton of them not getting picked up. I want to start with, obviously, what Pat Mahomes means to this team is not something that we have to go over, but just the fact that I feel like Veach and Reed have been reinforced with what we've seen happen with the rest of the class. 4 of the top 5 not getting picked up. Does the class as a whole surprise you?
I mean, yeah, it does, because to a degree, these should be slam dunks. Your first round picks should be players who are absolutely in position to be picked up. I think there's a couple of things, and it's notable because I think it plays into the CBA and the new agreement and about how fifth-year options are going to be calculated going forward. Because right now, it's if you're a top 10 pick, that's a big hit. That's one. So to a degree, it makes sense that maybe some of these top 10 picks weren't getting picked up because their salaries are huge. They're going to be paid as basically one of the top guys in the league, regardless of how well they performed. So if they're not one of the top 3 to 5 best players at their position, to a degree, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense economically to pick those options up. That's just the kind of the reality of it. You absolutely have to hit on those. It kind of surprised me maybe than some of the others. Maybe the economics of the NFL right now played into it a little bit, that if there was any questions on some guys, it seemed like maybe teams sided, not. So if there was any borderline, decisions we made, it looks like teams opted to save the money. Maybe they still work out deals with those guys. And the Chiefs had I think one of the rare cases where even though they pick up the 5th-year option on Mahomes and it's $25 million, it's still a bargain. That's a cheap, that's cheap for Patrick Mahomes. That's a discount. So it like I said, it's really intriguing because they've changed the formula. So going forward, we're going to get to a point where that's not the way that those 5th-year options are calculated anymore. It's going to be tied to how well they actually perform. And I think that will definitely change the equation, because right now, if you've got to be a top player at your position, especially with those top 10 selections, because it's a big cap hit.
I think this is going to lead to less fifth options being picked up in the future. How do you feel?
I think the formula will help a little bit because, it's going to be closer tied to your performance under the new CBA. So I think that will make it more likely maybe that some of these 5th-year options get picked up. Of course, it also means that, hey, guys are going to get paid for their performance. So, if you're the 31st pick, if Clyde Edwards Helaire, becomes a stud player, his 5th-year option, it's going to be pricey, compared to where it would have been under the old formula. Because under the old formula, 32nd pick in the draft, that'd be a bargain. If he becomes one of the best running backs in the league, that would be a bargain. That's not going to be the case anymore. With it tied to performance, if he plays well, he's going to make some money. So you still like that because teams like to have that 5th year of control. They like to have that option. But I think it will probably be beneficial to the players going forward, because if they play well, they're going to get paid. If they don't, hey, they're going to have to go out and prove it and try and make their money elsewhere.
Yeah, and that was going to be my question. This was one of the details in the CBA that we didn't really get to until we needed to. When you look at the negotiation, who do you think came out on top? Is this better for the players than the old system, or is it better for the owners?
To me, it takes away a little bit of the gamble. Because to a degree, it was just absolutely random choice. Whether a player was going to make out well on their 5th-year option or not. It just depended on a little bit about where they were picked, and it didn't have anything to do about how well they played. How well they played would play into whether or not the option was picked up, but how much money they made no effort. They could go out there and be very mediocre, and if they were a late first round pick, hey, they still might get their option picked up. But Whereas if you're number 5 pick in the draft and you don't perform, it's not going to get picked up. So I think you're going to see the options picked up a bit more, but I do think the owners probably like the fact that, you know, now that it's going to be with them tied to their performances, I think it's going to be easier for probably owners to pick those up because they know that they're not going to have to overpay for guys who maybe haven't lived up to their draft status.
Yeah. And this ties in because the Chiefs went and picked up one from this class who had gone through a couple of teams and is gone. And Taco Charlton comes to the Kansas City Chiefs on his 3rd team, but again, another first-round pick. I think that fits the Brett Veach MO, but when you look at the rest of these that weren't picked up that are going to be free agents in the future, do you see anybody in that group that maybe Veach and Reed had higher on their list that could possibly be targets in a free agent kind of signing next year?
I mean, it's possible. I mean, and that's really the key. I mean, if there's we know what Brett Veach's MO is, which is that if there's a player that he likes, he never seems to fall out of love with him. I mean, no matter what they do. I mean, so if he gets a chance to pick him up later, he'll go out and try and get him. I'm trying to think if there's anybody that's really standing out to me. I mean, to a degree, I mean, I'm not sure there's anyone that's really jumping out. Because a lot of the guys, you know, they were talking about pretty borderline. So I mean, they're going to have to, you know, sign some prove it deals. So maybe they will be affordable. But then again, we're also in a spot where I'm not sure that the Chiefs are going to be in a position to give anybody anything more than a prove it deal in the next couple of seasons because they got some other things to take care of.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I see it too. It makes me go back and look at who performed well enough to keep the interest level up from the Chiefs, despite not getting their 5th-year option. I mean, that's a very thin line, I think, to put both those criteria together. But it doesn't go beyond me that they're going to keep that eye out, right?
Yeah, I mean, really, I mean, the one guy that I think would be the biggest fit, you just look at, you know, performance and team and whether the Chiefs might be interested, would be Malik Hooker. But you know what is that? I think Hooker's going to get paid a really good contract. I mean, I don't think he's going to go out there and have to be signing a $1.5 million prove it deal. I mean, I think somebody's going to give him a big deal. And I don't think that, but the Chiefs, where they are position wise, I don't think that they're the team that's going to go out and do it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I think it's very interesting to watch the progression of how these teams that we perceive drafting well the first time around, at the end of the day, 3-4 years later, the perception changes enough that you can't really forget where the Chiefs might have thought they were to begin with because of this propensity of them to continue to bring in guys that were high on boards 3 years before.
Yeah, and I circle back and I think about the Chris Jones deal, because if you go back and you look at that and you see what the Chiefs picked up for Chris Jones in that trade, you know, moving back in the draft capital that they, you know, surrendered. I think if you look back at it now, I think you'd go ahead and you'd take Chris Jones late in the 1st round, and because you didn't really get anything that was worth giving up that 5th-year option. So there's so many things that go into it. And you know what? There might be a team out there that comes back and looks at it and says, you know what? We should have called the Chiefs trying to get that 32nd pick in the 1st round. The Chiefs could have still got the guy that they wanted, could have moved down. Maybe there's another team that would have liked to have that 5th-year option. And then again, maybe the Chiefs are going to sit there and say, we're glad that we've got it because we can keep it under control for 5 years now. And with running backs, I'm not sure that you're going to see a running back get a 6th year with the team too many times going forward.
And that's exactly what I want to get into in the next segment. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you can say whatever you want about where it was picked, what the value was, trade back scenarios, but in today's day and age, having that 5th-year option, even at the running back position, which a lot of people are complaining about, it gives you that fulfilled first contract, right? If it is a performance-based thing that really puts him out at the top of the thing, you can use that 5th year to keep it under control and not have to pay him a market contract. But does that limit, if he is successful right out the bat, does that kind of limit the chances of him getting a second contract in KC?
I mean, I think that it does. I mean, I just look at it from, you know, how the game is played right now, how contracts are structured, and just the economics of the game. And I think you got to go into this. And I think the Chiefs kind of are probably going into this looking at that they're going to have Clyde Edwards-Helaire for up to 5 years. And that's how they're just going to manage it. I think that's about the only way that you can go into it, because we're in an era now where running backs don't seem to hold up that long. This is a guy that, based on his body of work in college, I think you got to feel pretty good that he's got some mileage left on his tires. So you're not going to have maybe the problems that he's, flame out early. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to come down to the player. I mean, if Clyde EdwardsHelaire plays himself into a position where he wants to be played one of the best running backs in the league, I don't think the Chiefs are ever going to be a franchise under Brett Veach and Andy Reid that's going to do that. I mean, I think they'd end up letting him walk after 5 years and move on to something else. So it's going to be more about the fact of, whether he just wants to stay in Kansas City. I mean, this is all assuming he hits and becomes a good player. But I think the Chiefs are absolutely looking at this as a 4 or 5 year guy, and that's probably it.
That's it. Yeah, and that's kind of where I am too. And when we look at the rest of the offense, the whole back and forth with Damian Williams, I think that kind of plays into that scenario, in that they extended him for a couple of years on what I think is a pretty reasonable contract, but you can't see him long-term being in Kansas City. I know there's even rumors about them trying to seek a trade for him right now, which I think is kind of silly in my opinion. Where do you stand on the backfield? Is this Damian Williams' job as a primary? Is it a true committee? Where do you think this ends up?
I say look at the Chiefs in the last few years, and it's another one of those positions where you can't have enough guys back there. You've got to be prepared with the fact that you might need to go 3 or 4 deep in an NFL season with guys that, get hurt. Sometimes they don't perform. You've got to be prepared for that. So, and the Chiefs have been in that situation. They have favored really going back to maybe a little bit of the Jamal Charles era. I mean, they had some guys who were able to step up when Charles went down. But this has always been a team, and I think Andy Reid, even going back to Philadelphia, has always been a coach that he's under the philosophy that I'm better off having 3 or 4 guys that I think can handle the football, rather than just putting all my eggs in one basket. Now, he's been fortunate that he's had some really good backs in that time, but he's also usually had some pretty good guys behind him. Yeah. So I don't see that changing, and that's why, I mean, I'd be really surprised to see Damian Williams go anywhere, because this is a team that's a Super Bowl team, and I don't think that you want to go in with the idea that, hey, your first-round running back goes down, maybe you get somebody else banged up. Who do you turn to? Right. You need to have somebody back there.
Well, and the fact that we have so many names we can point to from Philadelphia, I think that tells the tale right there. So I'm with you there. Not much change at the specialty position of pass catchers. So really it's about, there's a new draft pick that is along the offensive line, and his role I think is going to be an exploration, to tell you the truth. How do you feel about the rest of the group, the incumbents along the offensive line? And right now, if you look at it, who's the best 5 that are likely to play?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think the 4 are set. I'd be really surprised if Austin Ryder doesn't hold on to that center position. He might have some competition. I mean, it really depends on how well, Nick Allegretti has come along. He, I think, would be the most likely to challenge for that center spot. The left guard's going to be really intriguing. I mean, my gut right now tells me that Andrew Wiley's probably going to come in as the incumbent there, but we will see. I mean, the one tough part for all the rookies, even Lucas Niang, is that with the limited offseason, it's going to be hard to win that job. Yeah. So you are probably going to be thinking for all those positions on the offensive line that being the veteran, being the incumbent is going to be the advantage. So maybe that puts you into a spot where it's Wiley and Mike Rimmers who are really competing for that left guard spot. And then you go with some young guys who are your next 3 guys on the line and can come in and play for you. And you got obviously a draft pick that you like there, and there's a couple of other young guys that this team's really high on. But I'll be intrigued. I mean, that's what I would think right now would be Wiley and Rimmers competing for that left guard spot, unless something just changes dramatically and these guys are able to get out on the field and compete for the job. But I think it's going to be really, really tough for first-year guys to come in and get playing time this season. Yeah,
I'm with you. I think Niang's probably a candidate for that swing tackle backup position. But I'm interested in your thoughts on Rankin. If he does come back healthy enough, is he another candidate for that? I know he played outside previously, but they had him at guard last season. Like I still see him as fairly versatile. How do you feel?
Yeah, I think he kind of fits into that category where they feel like he is one of those Swiss Army knife types. I mean, he's the guy that they feel like can play 4 different positions. I don't know if I'd throw him in at center, but he's a guy that they believe can play different spots. We will see. I mean, I haven't heard anything specifically from him or about him, but patella tendon rupture, that's you're usually lucky if that's a 12-month recovery. I mean, if it's anything less than that, and that was late enough in the season that I gotta think it's going to be incredibly tough. So if I'm the Chiefs, I don't go into this season counting on Rankin at all.
Okay.
I'm just crossing my fingers and saying, hey, if he can come in and compete at some point and provide some depth, that's fantastic. But I think the idea of thinking that he's going to be able to, play week one, I think that's a big ask, and you're probably crossing your fingers a little bit.
Yeah, that seems structurally problematic at best. I just don't even know if there's a need at that point, or if he's a candidate just sit on the pup, because I don't know that outside then is probably more of a stretch for him right now than it should be. So I really don't see the need because of the cluster of left guard options in particular. So maybe they just let him sit. I'm not certain, but other than those guys, couple of questions about fit and finish, how things might adjust on the offensive side of the ball this year. A couple of wrinkles, obviously, with the new running back. The return of John Lovett is something I'm really intrigued by. I might be the only one. I don't know. But what does, in your opinion, the addition of Edwards-Helaire, what seems to be a little bit more focus on the running back position, how does that fare into some of the guys that aren't Kelsey and Hill and Watkins?
Yeah, the addition of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I mean, the one person that I think it's intriguing the most for me now is, they go out and sign DeAndre Washington, which, you look at the depth-wise, you look at the numbers, and, hey, that Edwards-Helaire, Damian Williams going to make this team. You're going to have Anthony Sherman. There's three guys right there. So you're really talking about at max two more guys, and you've got Darwin Thompson, you got Darrell Williams who will be back. Washington, I think, now kind of fighting for that spot. And when you throw in a Lovett, yeah, you know what? I think you'd almost have to count him as a third tight end. That if he's going to if Lovett's going to make this team, you can't carry three tight ends and five running backs. I mean, that's just, I think, the reality of it. So I think if Lovett makes this team, I think you're accepting the fact that you're going to run with Travis Kelce and likely Ricky Seals-Jones as your tight ends, and Lovett's your guy. I loved John Lovett last year. I mean, I thought he was really intriguing. I mean, it's a fantastic story. He's a good dude. I want to see more of him. But I'm at this point, I'm like, I think that so rarely do these things hit. I mean, occasionally they do. And the Chiefs have been trying now for the last few years. I mean, I think Brett Veach wants to prove to everybody that he can go out and find a Trey Burton type. Yeah. And that's what they're looking for. You know what? I mean, I think that these lottery tickets are maybe, less than 10% hits, and more than likely, it's not going to hit. But I want to, I'm with you. I want to see more of the guy, but I'm not thinking it's anything close to a sure thing.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm more hopeful than anything, but I love the fit. So that's enough of daydreaming for me. Sorry about that. We'll get sidetracked some other way here in a minute. So I want to switch over to defense. There's a million directions that we can go with this, but this week in particular, when they should have had OTAs, when they should have had some form of rookie camp already, just the amount that they're behind and the guys that right now I think they're in a situation that they have to rely on. When I look at it, I feel like Willie Snead is Willie Snead. Sorry, wrong Willie. It's not L'Jarius Sneed or Willie Gay, but I think Willie Gay Jr. has the best chance of actually contributing not only from the get-go, but in terms of snap count, probably most on the whole of this rookie class. Does that make sense to what you see as well?
Yeah, it does. I mean, if no other reason than just the numbers. Now, I look at this and I'm thinking, okay, the Chiefs are probably going to do a lot of what they did last year, which is you're running with a lot of two linebacker looks, maybe one linebacker looks a lot of times, because they like their safeties, especially if everybody's healthy. And Juan Thornhill, it looks like he was tweeting and alluding to the fact that he's maybe a full go running again. Which would put him on track to, being ready by July 1st, which was his goal. Mm-hmm. So if that's the case and, you're feeling pretty good at safety, then yeah, I mean, you're leaning, how much you lean on those guys at linebacker is a little bit less, but I look at the numbers and yeah, I mean, I think Willie Gay out of the box right now is one of their 4 best linebackers. And as far as just big play ability, might be in your top 2, maybe your best guy. I mean, he's got a lot to learn. But he's obviously he's got more upside and explosiveness than a guy like Ben Neiman. So, there's that. Even though Neiman's going to have the advantage of knowledge on him big time. Gay's just got talent. I mean, he's got speed that these other guys don't have. I mean, there's just athleticism that he has that nobody else matches. So I think that there's got a really good chance to get him on the field, even without the instruction and without the knowledge and the learning. That's going to be tough for him. I mean, that's the biggest part, but it's also a position to a degree where you can hide that a little bit. But then I go back to Derrick Johnson and remember DJ kind of struggled early on, learning the position. And it wasn't until a few years in the league that he really, really excelled. Could be the same situation here. I mean, this is a guy that, maybe he is better prepared coming into the league and it won't take as long. Like we said, I put in that category. It's going to be tough for rookies this year, but of any of the rookies, he's probably got the best chance to make an impact this year.
Well, and on this side of the ball, I would not have thought that there was going to be multiple rookies that were going to have to play a role. But if you asked me on day 3 of the draft what L'Jarius Sneed's role was going to be, I would have told you he's got time to learn and grow into it. The whole thing with Breeland, we're talking about a minimum 4-game suspension for the initial incident, let alone this last arrest. That to me says, because they haven't gone out, and even though there's a couple of free agents that you could maybe call borderline worth making a small investment in, that tells me that they're high enough on Sneed that they're going to have to put some snaps on him very early as well.
I think they're high enough on both those guys anyway, Sneed and Bo Pete Keys. I think they're high on both of them. You know what? This is, to a degree, it's, I think, the 3rd season in a row that the Chiefs are going into the cornerback position where I think they feel better than the fans do as far as the depth goes. Because I think they really like Rashad Fenton. I think they think that he's going to be a regular player this year. Brett Veach seems really high on Antonio Hamilton too, even though he has, with the Giants, he had a hard time finding the field. Was mostly a special teams guy. And when we looked at that, it looks like mostly a special teams ad. They think he can get on the field too. So it wouldn't surprise me if, early in the season, they did lean on, that 3 group, Travaris Ward, Rashad Fenton, and Antonio Hamilton. And then it's Keys and Sneed who are, battling to get time. I do think of those 2, I think Sneed probably has the better advantage. I mean, he has a higher draft pick, obviously, but I think he's got the skill set to play multiple positions and maybe do a little bit more right now, which is what, Steve Spagnuolo likes to do. I think he fits the scheme really, really well. So I think he could definitely play his way into a role. It's just, once again, I mean, it's going to come down to how much time that these guys get on the field before the season and how much they can pick up.
Yeah. And when I look at how young they might be in the secondary, when they do get on the field, it makes me wonder about scheme shift, about what Steve Spagnuolo wants to do in particular, and whether he feels that he can still play as much man and press in particular as he would like to, as they did last season. So it makes me wonder if they're drifting back towards zone again because of the youth at the positions.
Yeah, I mean, it's curious. I mean, they went with a lot of guys who are, press guys first and zone second, but they did pick up some guys who have some experience with that. So it's not like fish out of water situations with any of them. But yeah, I mean, I think you're still going to end up seeing a defense that's probably similar to what we saw last year, which is that you're going to see 3 safeties on the field a lot. You're going to see 3 corners on the field, probably a lot less than you think. So, they're not really straining that and putting guys, into positions where they're not ready or prepared. I mean, it's a cliche, but, Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo lean on it, which is that they don't want to put guys in the, position for, situations they're not ready for. So I can definitely see them leaning on the experience. And if that's the direction they go, then yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see a lot more safeties on the field than you are corners this year.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to go about it. If they would ever actually do something, and we'll see when they actually get on a practice field, we'll have a better idea. But thanks for all of your time and breaking all this down for us, Matt. I hope that you have a great week. Folks, make sure you hit everything over at Chiefs Digest. That's where you can find Matt's work. Anything we should be on the lookout for?
Hopefully this week we'll get up my first projection roster for this season. So hopefully you'll see that in the next few days. And we are going to be hearing some of the players this week. Maybe Andy Reid midweek. We will see. So hopefully you'll get a little bit of content from the team this week.
Well, I'll be watching. I hope all of you are as well. Matt, thanks for your time. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, Ryan. Good talking to you.
Yep.